morning. Thank you, Queen Sherelle, the moderator, panelists, family, and friends. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this summit. I count it a pleasure to be here, and I give honor to the Most High God for allowing me to be here. I just want to share with you that I am a caregiver. The reason why I'm a caregiver, when my son was born, I became a caregiver. When my grandfather was diagnosed with prostate cancer, I became a caregiver. When my mother was diagnosed with colon cancer, I became a caregiver. And my grandfather and my mother died 9 months apart. And then my father, right now, thank God he's in the land of the living and he's doing good. But I know the day is going to come that I will be his caregiver if the Lord says the same. Last but not least, my grandmother. Oh my God, my grandmother, her life completely changed. This was a lady that used to iron her sheets. This was a lady that would clean her house that you could actually eat off the floor. I don't suggest that, but that's how this lady was. She was beautiful. She was vibrant. She loved outdoors. She loved doing things in the home. She was a good wife. But one day, matter of fact, one night, she started shooting in the ceiling. Yes, I said my grandmother was shooting in the ceiling. And my uncle and my father said something's going on with your grandmother. Well, guess what? I called my grandmother. She answered the phone. And I said, Grandma, what's going on? She was whispering. I didn't understand the whisper. I said, Grandma, why are you whispering? And she said, they're here. I said, who's there, Grandma? She said, they're in the ceiling. And just to know that your grandma is shooting in the ceiling, you know something was wrong. Now, what ended up happening, my uncle shared with me that the policeman, because she called 911, letting them know that somebody was in her ceiling and she was shooting in the ceiling. I didn't even know my grandmother had a gun. I couldn't even believe that she had a gun. And trust me, it was a real old-fashioned gun. The head on that gun was probably about that long, and she was shooting in the ceiling. But what really made me realize something was going on with her, the police told my uncle. He said, if she calls one more time, we're going to pick her up. And I said to myself, they're going to put her in jail? Because she was shooting in the ceiling, something was wrong. But what my grandmother did for me, she prepared me for my employment with a mental health hospital. That's when I realized that the people that was in this mental hospital was my uncle, my aunt, my cousins, my sisters, my brothers. That's when my passion had changed for my grandmother, because I realized that she was preparing me for where I was going. God had me on a journey that I didn't know anything about. See, my grandmother was never diagnosed with anything. She never went to the hospital because I thought it was the norm. You just had people in your family that was a little off. But my problem that was with my grandmother, I was trying to understand, why was she off? What took place? To this day, I still don't know. I can guess based on medical terminology, Alzheimer, dementia, but she had changed. Like I said, she was shooting in the ceiling. And guess what? I'm going to be transparent. I wasn't going over there that night. I said, I'm not going to my grandmother's house tonight when she was shooting in the ceiling, because my grandma would not harm a fly. she would not even harm herself. But the thought that she had a gun in her hand and she was shooting, it made me think she would shoot me. And I wasn't going to take that chance. So I kept her on the phone, trying to calm her spirit. I even had prayer with her, and she was still whispering. And I was just trying to encourage her. I was like, Grandma, it's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. She said, yeah. And I mean, it was just like a different person. And like I said, she just made me embrace mental health and mental issues. And then I just know that from going from mental health, I became a sponsor residential caregiver, where I started taking care of people with special needs or totally disabled. It just opened doors for me, and I thank God for my grandmother, so that I could have compassion for people that their mind just go left field. And I mean people that could clean their house, could take care of themselves. And I forgot to share with you, she even had a puppy in the house. And I'm like, Grandma, why you got this puppy in the house? And she said he was homeless. She had a strange dog in her house. That's how much she was changing. It was unbelievable how my grandmother was changing. And it just broke my heart. But she was preparing me. She was pushing me into my destiny. She was pushing me. And I mean, even one Sunday when I picked her up to take her to church, my grandma was very particular about how her wig should be on her head. When I got to the house, it was probably about 10 o'clock in the morning. And when I went in, her hair was standing this tall on her head. And I'm like, Grandma, what's going on with your hair? And she said nothing. I said, oh my God, Grandma, your hair is all over your head. She was just going through changes. I saw her whole life change right before my eyes. And do you know, before I could leave, we didn't leave her home till about 1 o'clock. Church was over. I took her there anyway, but that's how late she was. Still, I didn't have no clue that I needed to take my grandma to the doctors, because she had been doing it. She had been doing it for a while, but it got worse. It got worse. Like I said, that night that she was shooting in the ceiling, I realized something was going on with my grandmother. But I realize now that God wanted me to serve as a human instrument. He wanted to fine tune me. He wanted me to discover the hidden treasure of working with people with mental illness and disability. He wanted me to help others, to let them know they may be having mental issues or mental illness, but it's okay. Then again, let me take that back. It may not be okay, but you still can love them. You can love them and have compassion for them. So I just thank God for that experience. It made me feel good when I was caring for others and providing benefits, and it gave me benefits. It gave me a heart of compassion. It gave me love. It gave me an opportunity where I could pray, because I am a minister. And one of the things that I do know, if you don't know nothing else, you can pray to the Heavenly Father for your family members. And that was my comfort zone, being able to pray. Even though I couldn't get her to get her mind back together, I was able to pray for her, and just know that God was bringing her through. And the last thing is when she went to the hospital, and I went in to see her, because she was a diabetic too. So I know that was part of her illness, because she couldn't smell anymore. She couldn't taste anymore. And she was cooking me chicken. And Lord, behold, that chicken was so bad. Oh my God. It had rotten. And I used to love my grandma eating. And I said, Grandma, you can't even eat this chicken. She said, why? She was giving me a fit. I said, you can't eat this chicken. The chicken is gone bad. She couldn't smell anymore. It was getting deep, even with that puppy being in the house. I said, Grandma, I was trying to be straightforward with her. I said, Grandma, your house stinking. Ooh, she would get hot with me. I said, your house is stinking. But what topped it off, even before then, on Fridays, I used to take her shopping. Well, Lord, behold, she called me this particular Friday and said, I'm not going shopping today. I said, why, Grandma? She said, I'm dizzy as a bat. I said, you dizzy? I went to her house. Of course, she was dizzy. She was holding the wall, trying to come to the door to answer the door. I could hear her coming, but she was holding the doors. I mean, just holding the wall, just trying to get to the door because she was so dizzy. And so when she went into the hospital, she stayed for 3 months. But God was preparing me. They were getting ready to amputate her leg because of diabetes. But the day that I went in and she didn't remember me, Lord, that broke my heart. And I said, Grandma, I'm your granddaughter. She said, you may call me Grandma, but I'm not your grandma. Lord, that broke my heart. I cried. The nurses were comforting me. They were hugging on me because I just couldn't believe it that my grandma did not remember me. Wow. Her life changed right before my eyes. But it started with her shooting in the ceiling. Shooting in the ceiling. And I just want to say to anyone, continue to love your family members. Continue those that their mind may be off. Go ahead and take them to the doctor. Say at that time, I didn't know anything about taking her to the doctor. I mean, I took her for her diabetes and everything else. And if you mention anything that was going on in her mind, my grandma would go off. It's nothing wrong with my mind. So I would leave it alone. I would just leave it alone. But I just thank you all for listening to me. And if you want to find me, I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. But I'm just telling you, care for your family members. Don't hold back. If they have any type of mental issues, get them help. There is programs out there that will help you. At that time, I didn't realize that I couldn't have gotten help for my grandmother. Maybe they could have given her medication that would kind of make her balance or calm down. I mean, it was getting bad. I mean, before they even was thinking about amputating her leg, they had to call because she was walking outside barefooted and got a toothpick in her foot. That was part of her getting her foot. Thank God they didn't amputate her foot at that time, but they had to call because it was ready to turn gangrene. My grandma was going through some changes. The lady that could iron sheets, that could cook a good meal, that could clean the house and make that house look sparkle. My grandma, she had changed so much, so much. And part of it was grieving because she had lost her daughter and her husband. She was just going through so much. But one thing I do know, I wanted to be there for her. And I was there with her for the 3 months that she was in the hospital. And she ended up dying in the hospital. She transitioned in the hospital. But that day that she died, I went to see her. And I was talking to her. She said, I'm ready to go home. And my son at the time was young. And he said, don't say nothing. And I said, don't say nothing. And I said, okay, Grandma, you going home. Not knowing that when I left the hospital called me back and said that she had transitioned. So I just thank God for you all allow me to share my story. Um, and I ask you all just to continue to pray for families. Um, and I just want to be all that God have called me to be. And I thank you.